We have some awards to present at this time. Due to COVID-19, we're unable to do them.
All right, are we ready? I can certainly show those awards for you. I just want to welcome everybody to the July 2020 meeting of the Pennsylvania Board of Game Commissioners. My name is Lori. I'll be moderating the session. I just want to make sure everybody can hear us okay. If you are able to type a question in the questions panel on the right of your screen, just to let us know that you can hear us, then we will get started. We will be starting the meeting with the presentation of awards, followed by staff reports. Then the board will take up its prepared agenda and conclude with new business. The agenda is available for download in the Handouts tab at the right of your screen. Much like the in-person board meetings, we will not be taking questions from the public at this time. Comments for the board can be emailed to pgccomments@pa.gov. This session will be recorded, and we expect it will be uploaded to the Game Commission's YouTube channel early next week. So with that, is there anything else that the president of the board, Commissioner Charlie Fox, is there anything else you would like to add before we start the awards presentation? Looks like we're good to go, and I see that people can hear us, so that's fantastic. So we're going to start off with some awards from the Bureau of Habitat Management.
Good morning, folks. I'm Tom Keller, the dove, pheasant, and quail biologist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. It's my honor and certainly privilege to be able to present some awards this morning to some very deserving groups and individuals. And these folks have worked very hard and focused a lot of their efforts, particularly on wild pheasant and bobwhite quail conservation in the state of Pennsylvania. The first group that I would like to highlight is the Central Susquehanna chapter of Pheasants Forever. This chapter is a good, strong, large chapter, and it has directly supported the wild pheasant recovery area there in the Central Susquehanna area. There's been a lot of folks in the chapter that have helped the project, but a few that I'd like to name individually: Mr. Lynn Appleman, Mr. Keith Sanford, who was once a land manager for the Game Commission, Mr. Butch Crick, and Mr. Tom Ball. And again, there's many, many more that have assisted the project. And these folks started this project long before the 2007 initial releases of wild birds. One thing that this chapter really stands out for is they don't just talk the talk, but they certainly walk the walk. They obviously raise a lot of money for the habitat, but they're in tractors throughout the year actually inputting habitat. So they're out there disking and spraying and planting. The other aspect of that is Central Susquehanna Wild Pheasant Youth Hunt, and they have been our primary partner in putting this youth hunt on and bringing wild pheasant hunting back to Pennsylvania. This hunt's been going on for the last 3 years, and in those 3 years, this chapter has directly exposed over 100 youth to over 500 pheasants flushed each year, or within those 3 years. So it's been a phenomenal event, and at the event, they not only provide the breakfast and the lunch, which is wonderful, but they are the ones acting as the mentors, the dog handlers, and working really hard to make sure that the youth and their families have an enjoyable time. For these combined efforts over the many years, the Central Susquehanna chapter will be receiving a framed pheasant print with a brass plaque. The next group that I'd like to recognize is the Cumberland Valley chapter of Pheasants Forever. Again, another strong chapter that directly supports wild pheasant recovery area in Franklin County. And again, there's many members that are very active, but two in particular I'd like to point out is Mr. Mark von Sternberg and Mr. Brian Brake. Again, their work began long before the 2014 initial release of wild birds in Franklin County WIPRA, particularly on Brian Brake's farm, where a lot of the habitat was first established. They've continued to work hard to maintain that habitat and maintain the birds that are there. And more recently, they have partnered with us on the Letterkenny Army Depot bobwhite quail focus area. And when they came to us, they donated a very solid 12-foot heavy offset cutting disc that is the primary disc used in all of the quail management at the depot there. For their combined pheasant and quail efforts for conservation of these two species, the Cumberland Valley chapter will be receiving a framed quail print with a brass plaque. The third group I'd like to recognize is the Big Covey chapter of Quail Forever out of Greene County. This chapter, kind of based out of the Hunting Hill Shooting Preserve, is led by Mr. Roy and Mrs. Sally Sisler, along with their son Ras and many other dedicated chapter members. This is the only Quail Forever chapter in Pennsylvania, and they're very dedicated and strongly support the Letterkenny bobwhite quail focus area. Last year, they donated $5,000 to the project, and this allowed us to purchase a 30-foot 3-point hitch sprayer for applying herbicide, as well as a UTV mounted sprayer, brand new out of the box. Because of their long-standing support, we will be presenting a framed quail print with a brass plaque to the Big Covey chapter of Quail Forever. The first individual that I'd like to recognize is Mr. Kent Adams of Pheasants Forever Incorporated. Kent is currently the Director of Field Operations in the Eastern Region, which covers pretty much everything east of the Mississippi River. Even though Kent is overseeing so much land with so many individual employees, he got his start here in Pennsylvania, born and bred, and started actually as a crep biologist with the PA Game Commission, 2004, and then moved on to Pheasants Forever as a Farm Bill Biologist Manager in 2012. Kent is extremely familiar with the crep program, and that has lent itself to the Wild Pheasant Recovery Area program, as he's gotten many Farm Bill biologists set in key locations throughout the state, not just the WIPRA program, but also private lands management for wildlife throughout Pennsylvania. More recently, Kent has partnered with us on the bobwhite quail focus area, and he's brought 2 Habitat Forever positions that are dedicated to the project. Kent will be receiving a quail print framed with brass plaque for all of his hard work and dedication to all of the many projects that we've done here in Pennsylvania for farmland wildlife recovery. The next individual I'd like to highlight is Mr. Kurt Bond with Pheasants Forever Incorporated. Kurt is currently the Mid-Atlantic Regional Field Representative, and that means he oversees all the states basically from Maryland all the way up to Maine. Kurt also got his start here in Pennsylvania as a VEPA HIP private lands biologist, and then moved on to the Farm Bill biologist role in the Central Susquehanna area, which also covered the WIPRA in Central Susquehanna. So Kurt's role there was very critical in establishing and maintaining a lot of habitat for wild pheasants, working with landowners by building strong relationships, as well as working with the local chapter. While with the local chapter, Kurt has held the role of youth chairman And that has led to a direct partnership with the Game Commission in organizing the recent Central Susquehanna Wild Pheasant Recovery Area youth hunts. Kurt not only helped to organize, but he helped to pull all the mentors together, and his vast experience in youth hunts helped make the Central Susquehanna Youth Hunt a success for the past 3 years. For all of Kurt's hard work in our Central Susquehanna Wild Pheasant Recovery Area and throughout the state, he'll be receiving a framed quail print with a brass plaque. Now at this time, I have to put on another hat. I'll be wearing the hat of the National Bobwhite Conservation Initiative State Quail Coordinator for Pennsylvania, as well as a quail biologist. Each year, each state quail coordinator for NBCI can nominate or recognize an individual, a group, or an entity that has made a significant contribution to bobwhite quail restoration in their state. For 2019, I nominated Mr. John Wakefield. John is the fire program manager for the Pennsylvania Game Commission and has been since 2013. Prior to that, John worked for the Fort Indian Town Gap as a forester for 5 years. At this point, I'd like to read the nomination for Mr. John Wakefield for the NBCI Firebird Award for 2019. John Wakefield, Chief of the Wildland Fire Logistics and Training Division for the Pennsylvania Game Commission, has been an avid supporter of the state's quail restoration efforts since the beginning. Understanding that prescribed fire would play a crucial role in the management of habitat, both during establishment and maintenance over the long term, John took the lead on fire planning and development for our first bobwhite quail focus area. Having chosen Letterkenny Army Depot as the location for the focus area, we soon learned that they had never conducted prescribed fire and only used suppression on the rare wildfire that would occur. As you can imagine, trying to convince senior staff of a military installation to put fire over hundreds of thousands of pounds of missiles and bombs to manage habitat is no easy sell. John patiently answered questions and worked with all involved to ensure any concerns were addressed. He coordinated a test fire over an empty underground storage container to demonstrate to managers the safety and control with which fire could be conducted. He helped develop a solid burn plan and began coordinating prescribed burns, keeping everyone involved and engaged to ensure continued cooperation and partner buy-in. From a biologist's point of view, John has been fantastic to work closely with, as he is open and interested in how we can tailor fit fire to assist quail management on a detailed scale, focusing more on quality instead of quantity. John oversees a statewide burn program that conducts over 10,000 acres of prescribed fire annually, but has always continued to make this project a priority, personally acting as burn boss for every fire. We have burnt over 1,600 acres since 2017 at Letterkenny Army Depot. And it's this determination and dedication to see this project a success that warrants the nomination of John M. Wakefield as Pennsylvania's 2019 NBCI Firebird Award winner. Because of John's hard work and dedication, John will be receiving not only a plaque from NBCI, but also a framed quail print with a brass plaque. I'd like to leave you with a quote from former President Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "We have fallen heirs to the most glorious heritage a people ever received, and each one must do his part if we wish to show that the nation is worthy of its good fortune." All of the groups and individuals that we've highlighted today and that have received awards have done their part, and we're very thankful for that, and we hope that they act as a model for everyone moving forward with wildlife management in Pennsylvania.
Good morning, Commissioners, Executive Staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jason Dukowski. I serve as the Director of Wildlife Protection. It is my sincere privilege to announce this year's Officer Awards. The first award is the 40-Year Deputy Award. On April 11, 1903, legislation was passed that provided statutory authority for the Commission to appoint deputy game protectors to assist full-time game protectors in protecting wildlife and providing a wealth of other services to the citizens of the Commonwealth. Since then, thousands of men and women have volunteered their time to this cause, often risking their lives and contribute immeasurably to Pennsylvania wildlife success story. The history of wildlife management is full of stories of great dedicated service of men and women who have served as deputy game wardens for over 100 years. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Harry Gillespie for serving 40 years to the Commonwealth. Harry is out of the Southwest Region Office. The NWTF Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. When the National Wild Turkey Federation was founded in 1973, there were about 1.3 million turkeys in North America. After decades of work, that number has a historic high of almost 7 million turkeys. To succeed, the NWTF stood behind science-based conservation to include law enforcement and the protection of natural resources. The NWTF Officer of the Year Award is an award given by the NWTF to celebrate those officers who are involved in a variety of work activities, from major cases and wild turkey success stories to public relations. All aspects of law enforcement are considered while nominating an officer. The officer must have a positive frame of mind regarding all work assignments, willingness to seek work activities through self-motivation, the willingness to interact and assist with all branches of law enforcement within their assigned work area, the ability to interact with the public in a business-like manner, and have the community's respect. On behalf of the NWTF, the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Brad Kreider as NWTF Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. The Northeast Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs Award. The Northeast Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs Association is an organization made up of chiefs and assistant chiefs from the states of Virginia to Maine, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Office of Law Enforcement, and Canadian provinces. NCLECA had their first official meeting in August of 1942 right here in Harrisburg, PA. As you can imagine, times were a little different back then. The main purpose of this first meeting was to encourage cooperation among states in solving problems as they related to conservation enforcement. Some of these problems addressed during this meeting include undercover officer use, sale and transfer of deer, cooperation with FBI, and gasoline and tire rationing. Since then, NCLECA continues to grow as a leader in conservation law enforcement. Annually, NCLECA recognizes an officer from each state for their outstanding contributions to fish and wildlife protection of our country's natural resources. On behalf of the Northeast Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs Association, the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Jason Amory as the 2019 Conservation Law Enforcement Chiefs Award winner. Shikar Safari Award. The Shikar Safari Club International was founded in 1952 as a group of international hunters who joined together to exchange experiences and ideas about hunting. It started as a social hunting organization, but soon recognized its potential to do meaningful things in the area of conservation. In 1973, the Shikar Safari Club International Foundation was formed. Monies raised by the club members on behalf of the club's foundation are used to carry on various conservation projects throughout the world. Shikar Safari Club International started presenting awards annually to wildlife law enforcement officers in all states, provinces, and territories in the United States and Canada in 1968. This highly prestigious award is given annually to a state officer whose efforts show outstanding performance and achievement among sworn conservation law enforcement personnel. On behalf of the Shikar Safari Club International, the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Bill Brehon as the 2019 Shikar Safari Award winner. Operation Game Thief Case of the Year. The Pennsylvania Game Commission's Operation Game Thief Case of the Year Award was developed to recognize a district game warden or deputy game warden that utilizes information obtained through the Operation Game Thief program to investigate and apprehend subjects that participate in wildlife crime that substantially impacts wildlife resources. The agency receives approximately 1,500 submissions each year through the Operation Game Thief program, making it one of the top 3 turn-in a poacher programs in the United States. Once a submission is received, it is reviewed by dispatchers and Bureau of Wildlife Protection staff. The average time from a reception of submission to the information being dispatched to the appropriate officer is approximately 20 minutes. The Operation Game Thief program is a successful, effective, and efficient program for the agency and reporting mechanism for the public to provide information to combat crimes against wildlife. This particular officer, I'm going to read his regional report that was submitted to me from the regional director, Dave Carlini. On the morning of October 16, 2019, then Warden Kokenhauer responded to an illegally killed 8-point antler deer found by a farmer in his field. The deer was shot in the head with a small caliber bullet. All 4 legs have been bound together with blue strapping. Warden Kokenhauer investigated the case, and ultimately each lead was unsuccessful. He then submitted a photograph of the dead buck to the PGC's Operation Game Thief program, requesting any information relative to the investigation. Within 3 days, he received information from an individual that recognized the blue strapping which had tied the legs of the animal. The strapping was unique to his place of employment and was not commercially available to the public. Using this information, Warden Kokenhauer identified the subject and obtained a full written confession. There is no doubt that the OGT post was responsible for solving the case. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Jeremy Kokenhauer from the South Central region as having the OGT case of the year. Kalfas Berry Award. Joseph Kalfas was the 2nd Executive Secretary, today known as the Executive Director, and the first Chief Game Warden for the newly formed Board of Game Commissioners in 1895. Part of Kalfas's legacy was his stringent belief in law enforcement of strong game laws and his push for the appointment of game wardens across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Kalfas was issued badge number 1, and Joseph Barrier, the first appointed game warden in the 1900s, was issued badge number 2. Wardens Kalfas and Barrier would ride the rail cars to remote areas in the Commonwealth to enforce Pennsylvania's new game laws. They used traditional game warden techniques and woodsman skills, such as patrolling by foot, canoe, snowshoe, and horseback, and camped in remote areas of the state to detect and investigate game law subjects or violators subjects that significantly impacted Commonwealth's wildlife resources. Warren Barrier died in 1915, and Secretary Kalfas died on the line of duty in 1919. The Kalfas Barrier Award recognizes any officer of the Pennsylvania Game Commission that utilizes traditional game warden techniques or methods and traditional woodsman skills to detect, investigate, and apprehend subjects that engage in significant violations of the Game and Wildlife Code. I have 3 officers that won this award, and I will start with Jacob Alexak. Jacob Alexak's nomination reads, after apprehending individuals who were involved in baiting of waterfowl, State Game Warden Alexak was left with a feeling that there would be more, or there may have been more violations. So he opened an investigation into the unlawful taking of waterfowl, in this case, Canada geese, in Crawford County. According to information State Game Warden Alexak received from the public, these individuals frequently committed violations relating to waterfowl hunting. Using information obtained from social media sites as well as other sources, State Game Warden Alexak conducted formal interviews of the individuals involved in the case to determine where the violations occurred. In addition to information obtained from social media sites, Alexak utilized proven boots-on-the-ground techniques to locate the subject's hunting locations, baited areas, carcass dump sites, and etc. His investigation lasted nearly 2 months, led him to file charges on 3 individuals. In total, these chronic game law violators were charged with 41 counts relating to unlawful taking of waterfowl. The defendants either pled guilty to the charge or were found guilty during hearing. While Alexak used modern techniques to make this case, he also used tried and true methods to bring this case to a conclusion. Okay, I'm going to go on to Jason Amory's write-up. While patrolling during 2018 rifle deer season, State Game Warden Jason Amory noticed a group of individuals skinning a deer behind a residence. He decided to conduct a field check of the deer to include the group and individuals and vehicles. As he began to speak with the individuals regarding the deer, he realized the deer was illegal. In this case, it was improperly marked. An attempt to interview each of the subjects while at the residence proved difficult, so he collected their information, seized the deer, and decided to do a follow-up interview. While conducting a follow-up interview with one of the individuals, he obtained a statement detailing how one of the subjects and an accomplice killed the deer at night using a crossbow and spotlight. The individual who provided the information to Amory was not involved in the violations and wanted to fully cooperate to avoid prosecution. As he continued to do the interviews and continued to interview multiple individuals, he learned that the lead subject and accomplice had killed 2 deer at night with a spotlight and a crossbow. These are all separate criminal episodes. Both deer were bucks, one of which was a trophy class animal. Amory filed 12 counts on the 2 defendants for various game law violations. In addition to the charges, Amory has requested $5,000 in restitution for the trophy class buck and $800 restitution for the smaller buck. This came about as a direct result of Jason Amory's decision to engage a group of individuals that he saw skinning a deer. And Jason, being a tenacious warrior, inquisitive, constantly makes cases like this, and he's willing to go the extra mile. And the last Kalfas Barrier Award is Brandon Feaster's, and his regional report reads as follows. During the early evening of November 30th, 2019, Game Warden Brandon Feaster responded to an incident in which a witness watched a driver of a silver Chevrolet pickup truck get out of the vehicle and shoot a deer approximately 20 yards off the roadway. Warden Feaster was extremely familiar with this district, recognizing the location as being frequently by a known poacher. Additionally, he recognized the vehicle as one of previously known suspect to him. Knowing his district, the landowners area, knowing his district, the landowners in the area, he checked with those he knew had cameras marking the roadways and determined the direction of the suspect has traveled. He surmised where the suspect would have gone, knowing a gate would require the poacher to exit his vehicle. Warden Feaster hoped that blood may have been left on the roadway. He was correct and recovered a small amount of blood at the gate. He then went to talk to the suspect. After a 45-minute interview, the suspect admitted to killing the deer and thought Warden Feaster would not discover it. During follow-up interviews, the suspect told Warden Feaster that the truck that he used to poach the deer had been dropped off at a body shop, and the bed of the truck was being sandblasted to remove any traces of blood. The poacher offered Feaster the following information, and to the point where he killed approximately 40 illegal deer in the same area, and it lasted his entire life. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Brandon Feaster, Jason Amory, and Jacob Alexak with the Kalfas Barrier Awards. Each year, each regional office chooses one outstanding deputy of the year for their region. This process is long and tedious and is exceptionally hard to win. Each one of these award recipients goes the extra mile. They are the officers that are the ones that respond to the calls in the middle of the night. So with that said, I'd like to announce the 6 Deputy of the Year Award winners as Michael Lindquist from the Northwest region, Gerald Schoonmaker from the North Central, Raymond Peters out of the Northeast, Kenneth Williams from the Southwest, Sean McGinnis, South Central, and Rebello Bertoni out of the Southeast region. Life Saving Award. This one is for Michael Yeck, and his nomination reads, given with pride on this day for his efforts on February 25th, 2020, While on patrol in Beaver County, Game Warden Yeck responded to a 911 emergency call regarding a possible suicide attempt. Together with a local police officer, Yeck performed CPR on the unconscious victim for approximately 40 minutes and revived the patient until emergency help arrived. While ultimately the individual did not survive, due to the efforts of Warden Yeck, medical personnel were able to donate the organs of the deceased, which were used to save the lives of 6 individuals. The life-saving award for the deputy, Michael Wright, his nomination reads as follows. On October 22nd, 2019, Deputy Michael Wright was traveling through Union City on his way to his mother's house. At the time, Wright was not on duty. Wright noticed a downed telephone pole ahead on the highway. He then realized that a vehicle had apparently just crashed into the pole. Wright noted that there were a couple of bystanders, however, no one was acting. White grabbed his duty bag and then he had with him in his vehicle and then instructed a bystander to call 911. Wright made contact with the driver of the vehicle, an elderly woman who was still seated in the passenger seat. Wright used bandages to stop the bleeding of a large laceration on the woman's head. He then noticed that she was wearing an oxygen tank and that the tube from the oxygen tank was filling up with blood. Wright was able to clear the oxygen tube, allowing her to continue to breathe. At this time, the woman was falling in and out of consciousness. Wright engaged her in conversation, and while holding her head, he continually asked her to look at him. Finally, medical and state police officers arrived at the scene. Wright stated that aside from his military training, the reason that he was prepared for the incident was directly due to Game Commission training and the fact that he had essential gear with him for Game Commission service. A few months later, a commission biologist was in the Union City area and was approached by an individual who was looking for Wright. That individual was the son of an elderly woman that Wright had helped save. The woman's son was extremely thankful for what Wright had done. At that time, the woman was still in extended care, but had come out a long way. NWTF Joe Kurtz Wildlife Manager of the Year Award. The National Wild Turkey Federation understands that in order to succeed in promoting turkey habitat and populations, they need science-based conservation. The NWTF named the Joe Kurtz Wildlife Manager of the Year Award after the former Georgia Department of Natural Resources wildlife chief for his leadership in the vital role he played in improving wildlife management. Kurtz also was a principal figure in wild turkey trap and transfer programs across North America. From enhancing hunting opportunities on public land to directly improving habitat on the ground, our habitat crews go above and beyond managing and enhancing game lands for all wildlife, to include eastern wild turkeys. On behalf of the NWTF, the Board of Commissioners, the Executive Office, and the rest of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we would like to recognize Phil Casper as the 2019 NWTF Joe Kurtz Wildlife Manager Officer of the Year. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matthew Chinook, Bureau Director for the Wildlife Management Bureau. Wild Turkey Specialist Mary Jo Castellina was recently recognized by the National Wild Turkey Federation with its Henry Mosby Award. This national award is presented annually to an outstanding biologist who has contributed to wild turkey management throughout his or her career, or has made a single significant accomplishment in the restoration or management of wild turkeys. Mary Jo has served on the Game Commission's as the Game Commission's turkey biologist for more than 20 years, authoring revisions of the statewide species management plan in 2006 and 2018, coordinating numerous research projects, and developing annual harvest management recommendations that balance hunter opportunity and long-term species conservation. The fact that Pennsylvania maintains the highest number of turkey hunters and the highest total turkey harvest in the nation is a testament to the success under Mary Jo's leadership of the agency's team effort on turkey management. In addition to her Game Commission responsibilities, Mary Jo currently co-chairs the National Wild Turkey Technical Committee. She is also a member of the Northeast Upland Game Bird Technical Committee, maintains close coordination with the Pennsylvania state chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation, and is actively involved in her local NWTF chapter, the Juniata Gobblers. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, Executive Office, and remaining staff in the agency, I would like to congratulate Mary Jo on this prestigious award. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Megan Thorpe, and I'm the Hunter Education Administrator within the Research and Education Division. Before I begin recognizing our 2019 award recipients, I want to thank the memo recognizing today, as well as all of Pennsylvania's volunteer hunter education instructors, for their dedicated service to passing on Pennsylvania's hunting heritage and their hard work and efforts to ensuring the next generation of hunters and trappers remain safe while in the field. On behalf of myself, the entire division, and the Pennsylvania Game Commission, thank you for all that you do. First, I want to recognize Sherman Pagelik, who is the statewide Outstanding Instructor of the Year. We choose our statewide Instructor of the Year from our 6 regional Outstanding Instructors of the Year. So the first one is Sherman Pagelik as well. He's from the Southwest. We also have David R. Levan from the Northeast, Robert R. Stevenson from the Northwest, Stephen Wenzel Jr. from the Southeast, Stephen F. Francis from the South Central, and Gerald Schoonmaker from North Central. We're also recognizing our service award winners, and they've been active within the program for the last 50 years. This one is from the Southwest region. His name is George Burson. Robert Dietz from the Southeast region. And just a note, he was also our Outstanding Instructor of the Year last year. So congratulations to Robert Dietz. Daryl Goodhart from the South Central region. Richard Miller, South Central. Jay Yinger, South Central. We also have 55-year instructor service awards. The first is Clifford Wood from North Central region. Herman Zieger from the South Central region. And we finally have a 60-year instructor service award, William Stahl from the South Central region. Thank you for everything that you do for our program.
Good morning. This is Rich Kramer, Northwest Region Director. In January of 2019, Habitat Management Group 5 in the Northwest region was tasked with completing 8 state game lands comprehensive management plans, or CMPs, by December 31st of 2019 for Erie and Crawford counties. That is 6 more than the typical annual requirement. This monumental task would be a challenge for any team, but this handful of Northwest region professionals completed the project on December 19th, 2019, 11 days prior to the deadline. They completed this daunting task while still performing their normal day-to-day work responsibilities. First on the team to receive the award today is Bob Blystone, Geospatial Specialist. Next, we have Shane Brenneman, Forester. Darren Clark, the Land Management Group Supervisor for Group 5. Roger Kaup, the Regional Biologist in the Northwest region. Brad Holcomb, the Foreman from Crawford County. John Keller, the Foreman from Erie County. Ryan Thompson, Forester. And finally, Stacy Wolbert, Biologist. It's my pleasure to congratulate this team for completing 8 CMPs 11 days prior to the 11-month deadline while still maintaining their normal workload. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Deanna Vance, the Director of the Bureau of Automated Technology Services. Earlier this year, due to COVID-19, employees were directed to telework where possible. At the time, there was much uncertainty about potential furloughs for those who didn't have the ability to work at home. With the best interest of our employees on their minds, the IT support team Bob McLean, John Hunsinger, John Burkholder, and Susan Young, took action and had a mission to keep our employees working and performing their jobs remotely. They went above and beyond expectations. In a matter of a couple weeks, they imaged and deployed numerous laptops, trained users on new tools, migrated all of us to a more effective VPN solution, all while providing support to the entire agency. As we navigate through these uncertain times of coronavirus craziness, the IT support team continues to provide outstanding guidance, support, and unwavering commitment to the agency. They have sacrificed their personal concerns and safety to ensure our employees have the tools they need to successfully perform their work remotely. I'm proud to have the privilege of working with this dedicated group, and I'm happy to present them with this Distinguished Service Award.
Good morning, everybody. I am Pete Sussenbach. I am the Director of Wildlife Habitat Management for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. I'm really proud to nominate Tammy Pease for the Distinguished Service Award. Tammy has gone above and beyond to help the Bureau and many times the agency accomplish our objectives during the COVID-19 pandemic. This has required her to come to the office to work odd and long hours and also to work many weekends. Tammy has done so willingly and always with a positive mindset to get the job done. We are truly blessed to have her dedication and strength in working both within the Bureau and also to have such a willing individual stand up to get the job done for the entire agency in these challenging times. Thank you, Tammy, for a job well done, and we really appreciate everything you've done for us over the last 5 months.
Good morning. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm with the Bureau of Information and Education. The final group of awards we have at this time is for employees who have reached the milestone of 25 years of service to the Pennsylvania Game Commission. First, we have Michael Beam, Land Management Supervisor, Northeast Region. Patricia Dayton, Bureau of Wildlife Protection, Clerk Typist. Daniel Figured, Region Director, Northeast Region. Mark Kerr, Gamelands Maintenance Worker, Northwest Region. Bradley Kreider, State Game Warden, Southeast Region. Daniel Lynch, Wildlife Education Supervisor, Southeast Region. Robert Minich, State Game Warden, North Central Region. Dirk Remensnyder, State Game Warden, North Central Region. Stephen Sneath, Gamelands Maintenance Supervisor, North Central Region. And Patrick Snickles, Information and Education Supervisor, Southwest Region. We'd like to congratulate all the award winners. Thank you for everything you've done to help ensure the future of wildlife in Pennsylvania. And that concludes the award presentation for today's meeting.
So now we're going to move on to staff reports. Commissioner Fox, is there anything you'd like to say before we start?
I'd like to congratulate, on behalf of all of the commissioners, I'd like to congratulate all of the winners and thank you for all that you do for conservation. staff reports.
I'm Andrea Korman, the chronic wasting disease biologist, and I'm going to provide an overview of the details of the final CWD response plan. This plan actually went through 2 public comment periods. During the initial 5-month public comment period, we received 447 comments. As a result of the substantial changes that were made to the plan, it was again made available for public comment for 30 days. An additional 438 comments from the public, agencies, and organizations were received. Some of the agencies and organizations that provided input include the USDA APHIS, the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, the Pennsylvania Department of Ag, DCNR, National Deer Alliance, the Forest Service, and QDMA, among others. In the final plan, 2 goals are described. One is to minimize the impacts of CWD on Pennsylvania deer and elk populations, and the second is to increase stakeholder understanding of, support for, and participation in CWD management efforts. To address the first goal, we have designated 4 geographic levels: disease management areas, an established area, enhanced surveillance units, and containment zones. Starting at the largest scale, we have disease management areas, which have been in effect since 2012. The purpose of a disease management area, or a DMA, is to reduce human-related activities that amplify and spread CWD and to increase the probability of early detection of CWD spread from known locations. At this slightly smaller scale, we have the established area. The purpose of an established area is to maintain CWD sample prevalence in hunter-harvest deer at or below 5%, and to minimize the risk of human-caused movement of high-risk parts to other areas. A 5% threshold was chosen because states like Wisconsin, West Virginia, and Colorado have data that show once this threshold is crossed, disease prevalence accelerates drastically, making management of the disease even more difficult. The established area currently includes Wildlife Management Unit 4A and a portion of 2C, and actually encompasses about 90% of our CWD detections. At a scale of about 30 to 80 square miles, we have enhanced surveillance units. So the purpose of an enhanced surveillance unit, which you can see in brown on this map, is to determine the extent and sample prevalence of CWD infection in new or high priority areas through increased sampling. The annual target sample size in an ESU will provide a 95% probability of detecting CWD if the disease sample prevalence amongst deer within that area is at least 1%. An annual sample of approximately 250 to 300 deer will fulfill the target sample size and can be achieved with hunter harvest and landowner cooperation. Hunters will be able to use DMAP permits in these areas to help meet those sampling goals. At the smallest scale of about 3 square miles are containment zones. The purpose of a containment zone is to prevent the establishment and spread of CWD by removing the most high-risk deer from the area immediately surrounding a new isolated CWD detection. Removing deer that have come in contact with an infected deer give us the best chance of containing the disease. So what management strategies might occur to help us achieve our goal of minimizing disease impacts on deer and elk? Restrictions on the movement of high-risk parts. This is to minimize human-assisted spread of CWD. This restriction includes moving high-risk parts outside of DMAs, as well as importing high-risk parts from other states and provinces that have CWD. Banning deer feeding and the use of urine-based attractants in disease management areas. These are to minimize human-induced congregation of deer, which will limit disease transmission through direct animal-to-animal contact. We want hunters to have the first opportunity to help managing CWD. Concurrent antlered and antlerless firearm seasons give hunters more opportunity to harvest antlerless deer. A concurrent firearm season in WMUs with positive CWD detections in wild deer has already been approved by the board for the upcoming season. As CWD changes on the landscape, additional or extended seasons could be used in the future to again provide more opportunity to hunters as a way to manage CWD. The only management strategy that has shown some success in the control of CWD is the reduction of deer abundance in infected areas. Increased hunter harvest can contribute to the management of CWD. Increasing antlerless allocations can increase harvest and thereby reduce deer abundance. Using this strategy at the WMU level and in larger infection areas, such as in an established area, will allow hunters to aid directly in CWD management. Increased antlerless harvest can also be conducted at a smaller scale, such as an enhanced surveillance unit, where hunters can use DMAP permits. Targeted removal is a strategy proposed in the plan. However, these are very small-scale operations that would primarily occur after hunting season. Their applications would be in containment zones, as the purpose of these areas is to quickly remove deer that may have been exposed to a CWD-infected individual. An example of a containment zone is shown on this map. Again, this is an area of only about 3 square miles. These efforts are also dependent on landowner participation, as removals would only occur where access has been permitted. Surveillance is also essential in CWD management in order to detect new cases of CWD and to track the spread and sample prevalence of the disease. Samples are collected through hunter harvest from voluntary samples from head collection bins and DMAs, as well as statewide hunter harvest samples collected from meat processors. Roadkill deer are also collected within and around the perimeter of DMAs. These samples often serve as the first indication that the disease is expanding into new areas. Clinical suspects or individuals exhibiting the physical signs of the disease are also collected statewide. Nearly all hunter harvested elk are tested for CWD, as well as roadkill and clinical suspect elk. To date, no elk has tested positive, and no deer from within the elk management area have tested positive for CWD. There have been a total of 473 CWD positive free-ranging deer since the initial detections in 2012. Sampling efforts have increased since that time, and over 95,000 deer and 1,400 elk have been tested. One of our objectives for 2020 is to evaluate the efficiency of our current surveillance methods. An important component to CWD management is communication and outreach. In order to be successful, support for CWD management activities is critical. Public input played a key role in the development of this plan through public comment, surveys, and focus groups. A CWD communications plan for 2020 is in development to guide Game Commission efforts in addressing stakeholder concerns and fostering partnerships. Outreach and marketing efforts will also occur across multiple platforms, including the Game Commission website, as well as other traditional and social media outlets. CWD is a serious threat to Pennsylvania's deer and elk populations. Without change and additional actions, CWD will continue to increase and spread across the Commonwealth. For management strategies to be effective, we must be prepared for a sustained long-term commitment of resources. For Pennsylvania to be successful in management of CWD, it will require the continued support and participation from all stakeholders. We will continue to review the latest scientific knowledge and management techniques to determine the most effective disease management strategies for Pennsylvania. The adaptive management approach detailed in this response plan is essential in managing CWD. The Game Commission will strive to continuously improve our response to CWD in order to fulfill our agency's mission to manage and protect Pennsylvania's deer and elk for current and future generations. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the CWD plan? Additional staff reports? I'm sorry.
Sure, we have the next report coming up here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gregg, Chief of the Wildlife Operations Division in the Bureau of Wildlife Management. Thanks for this opportunity to provide an overview of the agenda item related to proposed amendments to our regulations for resident Canada goose depredation permits. I will say right at the outset that this proposed rulemaking is really pretty much a housekeeping item and not something that's going to be a game changer in goose management. However, because these would be the first amendments to these regulations since they were initially established more than a decade ago, before the terms of any of the current commissioners, I wanted to provide the board with the historical context of this issue and some background on the regulation changes that are being recommended. Resident Canada geese provide a tremendous amount of recreational benefits in Pennsylvania. Approximately 20,000 hunters spend about 90,000 days pursuing geese in the Commonwealth each year. In addition, their accessibility and general tolerance for people make resident geese a popular species for wildlife viewing, especially for individuals with physical limitations that make it difficult to observe more secretive wildlife species living in less accessible habitats. At the same time, the close association between resident geese and civilization creates a significant level of human-wildlife conflicts, including accumulations of droppings on lawns and walkways, aggressive defense of nest sites, crop damage, potential for disease transmission, and traffic hazards and aircraft strikes. In a 2019 survey of Pennsylvania residents, 23% of respondents indicated that they regarded Canada geese as a nuisance, and another 19% indicated that they liked having geese around, but worried about the problems they cause. In response to a separate question specifically asking about problems personally experienced with various wildlife species, 4% of respondents indicated they had personally experienced problems with geese in the past 12 months, and that was similar to the percentage reporting problems with black bears. So, as with several other species, management of resident geese requires attempting to maintain overall statewide populations at a level that balances the pluses and minuses, as well as providing management tools for individuals to address specific localized conflicts and damages. From the late 1980s through the early 2000s, resident goose populations increased dramatically in Pennsylvania, in part because of restrictive harvest regulations necessitated by severe declines in migratory goose populations that winter in the Atlantic flyway. The blue line on this graph shows the population trend for resident geese in Pennsylvania during that time, and the tan bars are a rough approximation of total Canada goose hunting days multiplied by daily bag limits for each of those years. As might be expected, this rapid population growth brought with it a large increase in goose-related complaints, which were also often difficult to provide timely assistance with due to Migratory Bird Treaty Act restrictions. Then, as migrant goose populations recovered and as band recovery data identified times and locations where few migrant geese were harvested, hunting opportunities were significantly expanded in the early 2000s. At the same time, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service prepared an environmental impact statement on resident goose management that resulted in the creation of several depredation and control orders that simplified and streamlined the regulations for taking nests, eggs, and adult geese in certain situations. The two highlighted depredation orders are the ones affected by the proposed regulation changes on today's agenda. It's important to note that the depredation and control orders were never intended to replace hunting as a population management tool, but to provide greater flexibility to individuals and businesses to address localized goose problems, especially in places where hunting was impractical or had proven ineffective in resolving issues. Also, the depredation orders continued to encourage hunting and non-lethal control methods and included restrictions such as the annual timeframes during which specific control activities could occur to minimize the take of migratory geese. So in general, these management changes have worked well. With increased hunting opportunity, resident goose populations in Pennsylvania have remained basically stable over the past 15 years. And also, while the negative impacts definitely haven't gone away, the availability of additional legal control methods has increased the ability of wildlife agencies to provide satisfactory recommendations and responses to complaints that they receive. To put the effects of the depredation orders in a population level context, this pie chart shows the fates of geese in Pennsylvania's annual fall population. Each year, about half of the population survives until the following year. Of those that die, approximately 75,000 are taken by hunters, and about that same number succumb to natural sources of mortality, such as predation. About 1,500 nests are taken in Pennsylvania each year, and with successful nests producing a little less than 3 goslings each on average, this nest control take removes about 4,200 geese that would otherwise be part of the fall population each year, so the purple slice of the pie on the graph that you see. Under the agricultural depredation order, 20 to 50 adult geese are killed each year in Pennsylvania, and that's too few to clearly even show up as a slice of the pie at the scale shown on this slide. And other depredation orders, the orange slice, account for removal of about 2,500 birds from the population annually. So clearly, while the depredation orders are providing local benefits, they are not a significant influence on overall goose populations. Although the depredation orders have been successful overall, it's become evident in recent years that in certain respects they were overly restrictive. Most notably, some of the southern Atlantic flyway states have begun to see nest initiation and damage to corn and some vegetable crops occurring outside the date ranges in which control activities were previously allowed. Therefore, in 2016, the Atlantic Flyway requested the Fish and Wildlife Service to review the depredation orders. Those reviews were conducted and summarized in 2 separate environmental assessments, ultimately leading to 2 modifications of the date restrictions on depredation orders in the flyway. First, the nest and egg depredation order, which previously allowed take only from March through June, now allows take year-round. Second, under the agricultural depredation order, take by properly permitted producers was previously restricted to May through August, and the month of April has now been added to that time frame. Based on some analysis by the Fish and Wildlife Service, the relaxed date restrictions might increase the number of nests taken in Pennsylvania by about 15% and the number of geese killed under the agricultural depredation order by 25%. Although these may be overestimates because they assume the same level of nest removals in January and February as currently occur in March, and the same level of crop damage in April as currently occurs in the rest of the growing season. In reality, given goose behavior, the amount of nesting and crop depredation would likely be less in those earlier months. Also, in some cases, the effect of the change will simply be changing the date restrictions might result in the removal of about 650 additional geese from the fall population. With those projected changes added into the pie chart on the right and the similarity to the pie chart on the left of current fates, it's pretty clear that the additional take from the date changes will not be significant in the big picture. So in summary, overall resident Canada goose populations are managed through hunter harvest and are currently stable. As a supplement to large-scale population management, depredation orders allow for response to localized problem situations with minimal impact on overall goose populations. The proposed rulemaking to modify the timeframes during which nest and egg control and use of agricultural depredation orders are allowed will align state-level regulations with recent changes to federal depredation order regulations and are expected to result in negligible additional take of geese. However, the changes will provide some welcome additional flexibility to farmers and other landowners and property managers to address localized damage and nuisance issues. Thank you.
Are there any questions? We'll move on to the next staff report.
All right, this is the final staff report coming up.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Lisa Williams, Ruffed Grouse Biologist, and I'd like to switch up my normal presentation a bit today. Normally, I update you on the serious situation we're facing with ruffed grouse declines, and we all leave the table feeling a little depressed. But today I want to focus on some of the amazing strides we've made in addressing grouse declines in Pennsylvania, and some of the tools we've developed that will assist our efforts and partner efforts to recover our state bird. First, I'll provide a quick background on the problem for those listening today who aren't familiar with what we're up against. Then I'll update you on the current status, let you know what we're doing to intervene in the ongoing declines in terms of research, management, and planning, and the leadership role that the Game Commission is taking on in developing an Eastern Region restoration program. After my remarks, Scott Bear and Dave Gustafson will be highlighting the work that their Bureau, Wildlife Habitat Management, is doing to respond to the situation. This graph shows grouse abundance in good habitat going back to 1965. The red area indicates the years that West Nile virus has been with us. The good news is that 2019 was a very mild year for West Nile virus, which is great because we needed that break since 2018 was the worst disease year on record. The better news is that so far 2020 looks like it might be another mild year. In response to the low disease occurrence in 2019, statewide grouse abundance increased by nearly 10%. And this was fueled by strong increases in 4 of 6 regions. But I know you're asking, if we had an extremely low disease year in 2019, why did we only see a 9% improvement in the state numbers? Basically, this is due to the severity of the declines that we've been seeing in recent years. First, we need more mild disease years. You can see after the dramatic losses when West Nile first entered the state, it took 2 to 4 years for grouse to recover from those losses. Quite simply, our birds need a longer break. Secondly, and most worrisome, are the low levels of grouse production we're seeing in the summer. This graph shows brood observations occurring since West Nile virus became widespread in Pennsylvania. Here you can see June brood observations in blue and August in red. You can see that the last high production year we had was in 2013. Essentially, West Nile virus has been carving away at grouse production without a break since 2013. The best way I can describe this is that the virus is eating our seed corn. We're losing too many young birds each summer, and then those birds are not in the next year's breeding population. So the virus is having a compounding effect. The correlation values are shown below the graph for anyone interested in knowing how strong the West Nile virus effect is on brood observations. So even in this mild year of 2019, we did not see the increase in reproduction like we would hope. Again, the birds need a longer break before we can see what level of recovery this population is capable of. We clearly know that West Nile virus and the loss of young forest habitat are the drivers of this decline. West Nile virus is now a 20-year problem in Pennsylvania, and loss of young forest is about a 75-year problem. We're at roughly half of the young forest needed according to the National Grouse Management Plan. So we're not going to turn this situation around immediately. And I'm thankful to Pennsylvania grouse hunters who are showing extreme patience as they wait for good news. We need a few more years of low disease prevalence, and we need another 800,000 acres of young forest now. But we're not going to get either of these immediately. So we have to take what we know and act. Since 2015, when we discovered the scope of this problem, we have been running to get ahead of it with a management response. We've been working on multiple fronts at once. I'd like to update you on our progress in terms of research and restoration planning, and Dave and Scott will update you on habitat management developments after my remarks. Our research program has been fully focused on understanding the problem. How are these birds getting sick, and what can we do about it? Since 2017, we've worked with the West Nile virus surveillance program in DEP to conduct surveillance and risk assessment in grouse habitat. Two important findings have come out of this work. First, we've confirmed that the mosquito we need to worry about is Culex restuans. This is a highly abundant native species that occurs throughout woodland systems. If you throw a bucket of bait down, they're going to show up. That's the bad news. The second finding is better news. We're seeing hints of landscape factors that we can use to our advantage. Elevation is the primary finding so far. This graph demonstrates our data to date. The higher we go in elevation, the fewer Culex restuans we encounter. This gives us a handle on mitigating disease risk by showing us the safest places to restore grouse habitat. The other part of our research program has been focused on mitigation. We're working hard to figure out how to prevent, minimize, and fix problems in woodland systems to lower disease risk. Since 2019, we've been assessing water sources on game lands to develop a search image for high-risk water. We have looked on 19 game lands, have trapped more than 52,000 adult mosquitoes of 25 species, and we're finding that in many of these game lands, 70 to 80% of the mosquitoes we capture are the West Nile virus vector. We've learned that we don't have to worry about healthy, functioning wetlands. The real mosquito production factories are shallow, stagnant puddles without a predator community. By developing a search image, we can enable land managers to identify high-risk water and take action to prevent vector production. The second focus of our mitigation research has been on mosquito control. Our research question is, at high elevations where mosquito vector numbers should be low, can we lower the risk even further with targeted treatments of breeding pools? We've selected two game lands, a rather dry site and a rather wet site, to compare the results. When we find these mosquito breeding pools, we treat them with essentially mosquito dunks, which is BTI, that has a long residual, so a pool only needs to be treated once or twice per summer. We've looked at 2 different game lands. We have captured more than 2,500 adult mosquitoes of 8 species. And we find that 45% of the mosquitoes we encounter are the vector. As far as results, we're seeing mixed results at this point. We have seen some positive effective treatment at the dry game lands in the South Central region, but no apparent effective treatment at the wet game lands in the Northeast region. By combining these research questions, we hope to develop best management practices for avoidance, prevention, and treatment of disease in grouse management areas, and we'll certainly make that information available to partners. Now, I want to point out that we're not waiting for 10 years of research before we act. Since 2015, when we first realized the scope of the problem, we have hit the ground running, focusing on developing a management response. A statewide restoration approach requires large-scale planning tools, and we've had 3 major successes over the past year that I'd like to share with you. The first is GPAST, the Grouse Priority Area Sighting Tool. Put simply, GPAST helps us work smarter. GPAST shows us where West Nile virus risk is low across Pennsylvania. It uses our research findings on elevation and soil drainage to show us where the best habitat investments can be made. It uses a 3-priority system to indicate where disease risk is moderate, seen in orange, low, seen in blue, and really minimal, seen in purple. From a grouse recovery perspective, this shows us the good, better, and best places to make habitat investments. This tool was developed working with Bob Blystone, the GIS analyst, and Tim Hoppy, the region biologist in the Northwest region. Together, they've shown me the power of GIS in assessing very complex systems. GPAST is an excellent example of the success we can achieve when we work across bureaus, regions, and work units. Already, we have 2 other eastern states building their own GPAST tools using our work as a model, and we couldn't be happier about that. To further pinpoint where to make habitat investments, we also need to know where grouse are. It takes grouse to make grouse, and we need grouse within a couple miles if we want them to quickly find the habitat we create. So another tool was developed working with the team of Jeremy Deal, the GIS analyst, and Clay Lutz, the diversity biologist from the South Central region. This sighting tool helps field staff record local grouse occurrences so that habitat projects can be put in the right places. Together, these tools show where disease risk is low and where grouse benefit is high. They form a 1-2 punch against West Nile virus. A third restoration planning tool was developed this spring. This map shows the locations of our most vulnerable grouse populations in the state. These are populations we should really be focusing on in the next 5 to 10 years in order to stabilize and expand them. Combined with the previous tools, these products allow all partners, from other agencies to NGOs to private landowners, to identify the most important places for habitat creation. Now, we know that any real effort to restore ruffed grouse has got to occur beyond our state borders. Disease and habitat loss are large-scale problems, and they require large-scale solutions. Our goal is to work with other states experiencing grouse declines and develop an Eastern Region Grouse Restoration Initiative. We are hosting a meeting of grouse biologists from 17 state wildlife agencies in early August to begin development of this initiative. Pennsylvania first assumed a leadership role in this effort 2 years ago when we coordinated region-wide sampling of disease antibodies. We've also made our West Nile virus data and our GPAST model available to other states. And we've advised states as they think about their own response to West Nile virus. Now we're taking multi-state collaboration to the next level by organizing this region-wide meeting to develop large-scale priority setting, management planning, and identifying critical action steps. Now, I know I talk a lot about grouse, but it's important for people to realize that West Nile virus is not just about grouse. It's not a grouse disease. It's a bird disease. We know of at least 24 birds in Pennsylvania that have shown population level losses associated with West Nile virus. Many of these are species of greatest conservation need. And a third of them are like grouse, impacted by West Nile virus and the loss of young forest. As with grouse, there's no time to wait. It's our hope in the game bird section that the research and recovery tools we're developing for grouse can also assist in the recovery of these other species. Finally, I want to thank the board and Game Commission executive staff for your continued support of the grouse management program. I'm sure you never expected your grouse biologist to start studying mosquitoes, but you've supported 5 years of West Nile virus research, and together we've discovered critical information needed to improve our grouse populations. And we've been able to take that information and develop the essential tools needed for success. Our agency has received a lot of regional and national press coverage this year as people beyond our walls realize how important this story is. As the Game Commission, we'll continue to lead where we can, in the state and beyond the state, to restore the king of game birds. Thank you. Scott Bearer and Dave Gustafson will now provide a summary of the Bureau of Wildlife Habitat Management's work on this issue.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa, for a great presentation. Ruffed grouse are such an important species that Dave and I really wanted to talk about how we're taking Lisa's great work and applying it across game lands. So by way of introduction, for those who aren't familiar with my voice, my name is Scott Bear. I am the Division Chief of Habitat Planning and Development, and relatively new. I've been with the Game Commission a little over a year now, but I just wanted to talk briefly about several things that we have going on in the Division of Habitat Planning and Development. And then I'll turn it over to Dave to kind of talk about what they're doing in the Division of Forestry and wrap things up. So in my division, one of the important things we're doing is related to comprehensive management plans. Of course, this is where a lot of the work that is conceptualized really comes down to getting planned out and timed out and really getting that work formulated and on the ground. So we are currently in the process of revising our comprehensive management planning process. We have a working group going on right now to establish a new planning process, and we are making sure that all of our state game lands have comprehensive management plans written for them. So we're in that process now, and it's moving along great. And of course, if there's any way to go back to Lisa's presentation that shows all the priority areas, we're going to be making sure that all the game lands that fit into those priority areas, grouse habitat is a high priority there. So that's number one. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. The second thing that we're working on very diligently right now is our wildlife habitat manual. So the long and the short of it is we have a habitat manual that is essentially a guide for habitat creation provided to our land management staff and habitat crews. And of course, these are incorporated into the comprehensive management plans. And there are chapters in here related to grouse and grouse habitat. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is our internal collaborations. We have, of course, a wide variety of collaborations that we have with our own staff in the Game Commission. Of course, this is across various bureaus, most notably with habitat management and wildlife management, but also we have in my division, we have a very strong partnership with forestry. And we're working to, help to make sure that non-timber sale and pre-treatment work are being communicated and collaborated across land management and forestry to make sure a lot of these projects are getting done efficiently and effectively, and frankly, making sure these projects are getting done safely. Not only are we collaborating with forestry, but we're also doing a lot of work with our engineering division to make sure that our infrastructure is getting placed in a way, and when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about our road work and our bridge work, to make sure that these infrastructure projects are placed in such a way that it allows for the long-term sustainable management of grouse habitats for many decades into the future. So a lot of collaborations going on with our engineering division there. Another point that I want to mention is related to our prescribed fire program. Many of you that are familiar with the strategic planning process that we completed earlier, and now we're in the current stage of reviewing and revising. Prescribed fire, we are targeting having 20,000 acres treated with prescribed fire annually. And that continues to be one of our goals, of course, with these wet springs. And then of course, with COVID, we weren't always able to meet that goal. But now that we have not only John Wakefield and Tim Haight, who are both RXB1 qualified, and that means they're both able to conduct aerial ignitions, we are hoping that we can make significant advances towards achieving that 20,000 acre goal. And of course, that will significantly help us achieve these grouse habitats across the landscape. And then finally, I wanted to talk about our external partnerships. We have a lot of collaborations that we have continued for several years with a variety of agencies and organizations. And we are championing these partnerships specifically for the work that we're able to achieve related to grouse management. So, one that comes to mind is our partnership with the Ruffed Grouse Society and the use of their drummer funds. Drummer funds fund various projects across the state, and of course, they're targeted for ruffed grouse habitat. Another series of work that we're doing, another really interesting partnership and collaboration, is the work that we're doing with the American Bird Conservancy, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and the Ruffed Grouse Society. And these are related to our NIFWF projects. These are the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation projects, which they fund enormous work up in various regions across the state. It's some really cool work that's happening. And then, most notably this year, we just submitted a proposal that not only takes us from the work being done on game lands, but into the surrounding private lands, targeted private lands. So of course, that would be the focus for these grouse priority areas, but using NIFWF funding to help us get good grouse habitat in targeted areas is an important part of these NIFWF projects. So another collaboration that we have going on is with NRCS, and we're hoping that we can establish a really novel mechanism with this federal partner to help us get grouse habitat in some of their priority areas and our priority areas. So you can lay those two pancakes on top of each other and really have us target private lands funding using NRCS dollars to help get grouse habitat in these areas. And of course, that segues to the thing that's one of the things that's most interesting for us in our division is the work that we are doing on private lands. And I think this partnership with NRCS and of course with Lisa and her team will really help us advance getting grouse habitat on private lands. It's something we're very excited about and really looking forward to creating some new opportunities there. So that pretty much sums up the work that I have in my division. I guess now what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Dave Gustafson, Chief Forester for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Take it away, Dave.
Thanks, Scott and Lisa, for the presentation there, and hello to everyone listening out there. Yeah, like Scott said, I'm going to kind of jump in and kind of wrap up and summarize things here. And tough act to follow so far. I really just wanted to touch on a few things, and like Scott and Lisa both mentioned, this whole GPAST development and grouse prioritization has really been a collaborative effort since the beginning. I remember back even probably 2 years ago now, Lisa and Ken Duran from the Bureau of Wildlife Management getting together with myself and then Scott and the Bureau directors all sitting down and talking about where we needed to go with this thing and how we needed to create these tools for our management staff. And really what you're seeing now is the outcome of a lot of this collaborative effort. So it's really been great. And the way we're really looking at this from the forestry side is really using this grouse priority area sighting tool as part of our comprehensive plans. And together also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the increased resources that the forestry program now has, both in money and manpower, that have been allocated to help us increase our outputs in our acres that we're treating annually. And we've been making some great strides. So using the GPAST tool and the CMPs to really help dial in and focus this effort. And, Lisa came up to our statewide forestry meeting in the September of 2019 and rolled this tool out to the entire staff. And it's been received very well. And people that are going through their 5-year comp plan reviews are rolling this tool in there and really helping to decide where and when we're getting the best advantage out of the habitat work that we're doing in the forests out there. So this is just a great example of another one of those many collaborative efforts we have going on between the Bureau of Habitat Management and the Bureau of Wildlife Management. And really looking down the line, we're already setting ourselves up to be evaluating the outcomes of all these efforts because, having the tools in front of us and moving forward all under the same umbrella with all our partners under the same understanding and with the same basket of information that we're working from, we really need to be looking forward to reviewing the outcomes out on the ground and seeing what's working, what's not, and continuing to learn and develop and do even better going forward. So that's really all I have. And I think at this point, we're all done with the presentation part. And then we'll jump to questions if anybody has them.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? We'll thank the staff for their reports. At this time, we'll move on to the formal part of the agenda.
And I am going to hand the controls over to one of our other staff members here. Brad, I think you're good to go.
All right, so I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Brad Bechtel, Chief Counsel for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. I will be reading the agenda today. Mr. President, I presume you would like to call to order the formal meeting. And we would then move on to the roll call of commissioners.
Yes. Would you call a roll, please?
Yes, I will. This is Michael Mitrick, Secretary of the Game Commission. Calling roll. President Fox, are you there?
Present.
Commissioner Nick.
Yes, I'm here.
Michael Mitrick, present. Commissioner Foradora. Commissioner Foradora, you may have to unmute your microphone. Are you there? Commissioner Foradora? I saw him listed in the attendance.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Fredericks.
Here.
Commissioner Hoover.
Here.
Commissioner Layton. Commissioner Schnepp Geiger.
Present.
President Fox, all of the commissioners are accounted for.
And President Fox, the first item on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of the commission meeting held April 7th, 2020. Would you like to entertain a motion to approve those?
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? The
So
April
moved,
7th?
Brian Hoover.
So moved.
Fredericks.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Bechtel, will you guide us from here on?
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item on the agenda comes from the Bureau of Wildlife Management. It concerns proposed rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code Section 147.746 relating to exceptions for resident Canada geese to align state-level regulations with recent federal amendments to depredation orders. Depredation orders for resident Canada geese were established in federal and state regulations in 2006 and have been successful in providing affected individuals and businesses with methods to reduce goose-related damage and conflicts, especially in situations where recreational hunting is impractical or insufficient for population control. Based on a recent review of the existing depredation orders, which found the timeframes for certain control activities to be overly restrictive, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has amended depredation order regulations to allow nest and egg control to occur at any time of year and to expand the previous May through August time period for take under the agricultural depredation order to also include the month of April in the Atlantic Flyway. Incorporating these federal changes into state regulations is not expected to result in a large increase in take of Canada geese and will have little to no impact on overall goose populations. However, individual landowners, property managers, and agricultural producers will benefit from additional flexibility to address localized instances of negative impacts from this species. The text is shown on pages 2 and 3 of your agenda.
Do we have a motion?
So moved,
Commissioner Knick,
Brian
so
Hoover.
moved.
Second? Do we have a second?
Commissioner Fredericks, second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. President and Commissioners, the next item is also from the Bureau of Wildlife Protection. It is on an insert to your agenda and a handout on the screen. This concerns proposed rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code Section 141.18. With the recent passage of House Bill 1188, the Pennsylvania Game Commission now has the regulatory oversight to approve the use of night vision equipment. Each year, the Commission is asked to review the prospective use of certain devices for hunting or trapping purposes that are otherwise prohibited by statute or regulation. As part of the review process, the Commission generally reviews to what degree use of a given device might negatively impact principles of resource conservation, equal opportunity, fair chase, or public safety. The Commission has recently been requested to formally review the use of handheld and firearm-mounted night vision and infrared optics for fur bearer hunting. The Commission has reviewed these devices and determined that their use will have no or negligible negative impacts to the previously mentioned principles. The Commission is proposing to amend Section 141.18 relating to permitted devices to authorize the use of handheld and firearm-mounted night vision and infrared optics used solely for fur bearer hunting. The text is shown on your insert.
Do we have a motion?
So moved, Brian Hoover.
Do we have a second?
Second, Scott Fordora.
Commissioner Knick.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
Aye.
Is there any discussion on that issue? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. At this point, we really would like to thank Representative Park Wentling for his efforts in supporting this legislation.
The next item is on page 4 of your agenda. It's also from the Bureau of Wildlife Protection and concerns proposed rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code sections 141.43 and 141.44. Current regulations concerning deer and bear hunting require that when a firearm is used, that it is a center fire firearm that propels single projectile ammunition. Unlike elk regulations, the deer and bear hunting regulations do not establish any minimum caliber or projectile weight requirements. There are several centerfire cartridges which are clearly designed for small game, varmint, and predator hunting. The Commission has determined that these calibers cannot be used to ethically harvest deer and bear. This list includes but is not limited to the 17 Hornet, the 17 Remington, the 17 Remington Fireball, the 22 Hornet, and the 204 Ruger. These centerfire rifle calibers are currently lawful but largely inadequate for deer and bear hunting. Beyond the calibers already mentioned, there are many 22 caliber centerfire cartridges which were designed for varmint or predator hunting, although some would argue they are adequate for deer hunting under the right circumstances. Considerations that would make a marginal cartridge minimally acceptable would be premium bullets, reloading, taking close shots that are at right angles and not quartering away, etc. The list includes but is not limited to the 218B, the 220 Swift, the 221 Fireball, 222 Remington, 223 Remington, 22 250 Remington, and 224 Weatherby. A survey of the Northeast chiefs regarding lawful calibers for big game in their states yielded various information, as is shown in your agenda, of what is legal or not legal in those states. As the Wildlife Management Agency for the Commonwealth, the Commission has determined that we could do more to encourage humane harvests with sporting arms that are appropriate for the game being hunted. This proposal will reduce the occurrence of lost or injured game animals. The Commission is proposing to amend sections 141.43 and 141.44 to require that firearms used to hunt deer and bear be 24 caliber or greater. The text is shown on page 5 of your agenda.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, this is Commissioner Fredericks. In the interest of opening a discussion, I'd like to move.
I'll second that. This is Commissioner Fordora, only for discussion, though.
Mr. President, this is Commissioner Fredericks again. With your pleasure, I'd like to read a statement that I have prepared on this issue. Is that okay?
Yes.
I'd like to thank all of our hunters that have weighed in on this discussion via email and public comment. I want to assure you that all the commissioners read your emails, listen to the public comment, and read the letters you send to the agency. As commissioners, our intent is to do the right thing for our wildlife resource and the hunters and the wildlife enthusiasts throughout the Commonwealth. We encourage this interaction and strive to work together. As we look at the North American model of wildlife conservation and other conservation plans, they often promote the ethical taking of wildlife. We all, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, as well as our Pennsylvania hunters, need to always remember that wildlife comes first. As we have heard from our hunters loud and clear, that in trying to eliminate these small calibers for big game hunting at this time is not in the best interest of our future, especially when it comes to recruiting younger hunters, as well as keeping and retaining aging hunters engaged in our wonderful pastime. I personally requested this language to be drafted, but after reviewing all the public comment, I will be voting no to the adoption at this time. As it is our responsibility to follow the North American model, let's collaborate further on this issue and use it as a very positive initiative to ensure the clean and ethical taking of big game. Our hunters are made up of a very diversified skills and knowledge levels. With that said, it will be the Pennsylvania Game Commission's focus on helping educate, especially newer hunters, on the correct type of ammunition for smaller calibers, firearms, and focus education efforts on shot placement to achieve the most ethical and humane taking of our big game. Our agency will collaborate with the ammunition industry and focus on getting better information to our hunters on the correct ammunition selection for these small calibers for big game, with the focus on white-tailed deer and bear. With these efforts, Pennsylvania would continue to lead the nation in educating our hunters and the public of our role as the state wildlife agency. Again, we want to thank each and every one for your emails, phone calls, testimonies on this and every subject for that matter. Remember, not everyone is always in the know, and anytime any of us can help folks that may be new to the sport, we are just raising the bar and keeping our great state of Pennsylvania the leader when it comes to wildlife management and the incredible hunting lifestyle that we are part of here in the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? Mr. Secretary, would you call for the vote?
Yes. All in favor?
In favor of voting no?
In favor of voting no?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
No.
I vote no. Yeah.
No.
I vote no.
Commissioner
No.
Fredericks. Commissioner Fredericks, no.
Commissioner Fordora, no.
Commissioner Knick, no.
Commissioner Hoover, no.
Commissioner Metric, no.
I'm sorry.
The motion does not carry. In other words, everybody voted no.
Mr. President and Commissioners, the next item is from the Bureau of Wildlife Habitat Management. It concerns adopted rulemaking to amend 58 PA Code sections 131.2, 135.2, and 135.41. To effectively manage the wildlife resources of this Commonwealth, the Commission proposed at its January 25th, 2020 meeting to amend sections 131.2, 135.2, and 135.41 to define and allow use of Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes on state game lands in the same manner as traditional bicycles. It is important to note that these amendments do not eliminate current statutory restrictions prohibiting the possession of loaded firearms in, on, or against vehicles propelled by mechanical power under Section 2503 of the Act. The text is shown on pages 7 and 8 of your agenda. It is important to note, however, that this item was tabled at the last commission meeting, and it requires a motion to remove it from the table before it can be discussed or voted on.
Do we have a motion?
Commissioner Knick, I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Hoover, I'll second.
Do we have any discussion?
I would, this is Commissioner Hoover. I would ask for the support of this motion. I believe that it is in the best interest of our aging population and their inability to reach the deep areas of our game lands, some of which are 4 and 5 miles back into the woods. This would certainly allow that population the opportunity to again access properties that they had hunted in the past. No.
Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Secretary, call for the vote.
Hold on.
Just as a point of order, the vote would be to just as a point of order, this vote will be to remove this item from the table in order to take a vote on whether to pass it.
You're muted. You're unmuted. Check.
Where are we here?
You need to call a vote.
Do we have a vote? Bring it off the table?
So moved.
Second?
You need,
okay.
You need to call the vote. Secretary.
Okay, this is Secretary Mitrick. I'm calling for a vote. President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Nick,
Yes.
Mike, and this is strictly to take this off the table. Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp Geiger.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. And just as a point of order, now you would take a vote if you desire on whether to adopt this or what to do with it.
Commissioner Knick, so moved to adopt.
Commissioner Hoover, I'll second the motion.
Call for the vote.
Discussion, Mr. President.
Discussion.
Discussion.
I have Commissioner Mitrick, I have a statement I'd like to read. The concept of a system of state game lands was envisioned a century ago by forward-looking conservationists who saw that wild places offering habitat for wildlife and the experiences of hunting and trapping will become rare and threatened in the future, which is our present day. That concept remains as valid, even more so, as when the first game lands were purchased. It is one of the bedrock principles of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and the Commission has no obligation to accommodate on those lands every manner of new mechanized conveyance that the marketplace develops and offers to the public. Regarding the recruitment of new hunters, it is doubtful that the privilege to ride e-bikes on game lands will attract new people into the fold of licensed buying hunters. The urge to hunt comes first. It is instinctive and primal. Hunters adopt their methods after they become hunters first. One outcome that we, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, must avoid is the public's coming to view state game lands as a place for riding anything, whether that's an e-bike, a regular bike, an ATV, or even a horse. Access is secondary to the fundamental justification for the existence of game lands. That fundamental justification for the existence of game lands must be the welfare of wildlife and opportunities for direct, intimate interaction with wildlife, such as in hunting, trapping, birding, or wildlife photography. When the reason for visiting game lands becomes riding on game lands rather than interacting with game lands and their natural inhabitants, wildlife, then game lands will cease to be the unique wildlife-based resource they have been for a century. Non-hunters are welcome on game lands and always have been. This is something to be proud of, that Pennsylvania hunters have provided these wild places for the enjoyment, renewal, and inspiration for everyone. What a legacy this has been. But in enjoying that legacy, non-hunters must be brought to understand and respect the original fundamental reason for game lands' existence, which is wildlife and wildlife-based recreation. Game lands come to be seen as a riding course rather than the wildlife habitat they were intended to be. There is no way to predict how far the demands for riding and access will go. In our litigious culture, some e-bike pleasure riders, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except that it is incompatible with the original intent for game lands, will claim that I can't pedal as far as that person, so my access must be accommodated by even greater electrical or mechanical assist. If e-bikes are permitted on game lands, it will be impossible to undo the decision should unforeseen conflicts make us wish to do so. Those with legitimate physical/medical need for a mobility device could still secure that privilege with a doctor's signature with e-bikes of both classes eligible for their use. Some hunters who have used e-bikes on private lands report the ease of approaching wildlife on a quiet, rapidly moving electrically propelled conveyance. Is this the ethical manner of hunting we have honored and upheld as the Pennsylvania Game Commission for over 100 years? It is not. It is true that Class 2 e-bikes are factory limited to 20 miles per hour. but even 20 miles per hour on a game land trail is a heady velocity, presenting the potential for dangerous encounters with hunters on foot or someone on horseback. Some manufacturers openly admit their bikes are set to class 2. However, the user can manually configure other assist settings to increase the speed. Experience should tell us it won't take long for that to happen. Some hunters have requested this official sanction of e-bikes because their own access to game land interiors has become more difficult. That reality is well understood and empathized with here by me. The problem with that rationale is that it's an argument that can be carried on without end. After e-bikes, others can claim even those devices are too difficult, and their appeal will be for more mechanization skillfully backed by lobby groups. Things have a way of sliding that way in our society. For public land management agencies, it's better to pick a bedrock principle, in this case, non-motorized access, and stick with it. It is not selfish to insist that game lands remain accessible by non-motorized means. The original intent for game lands assumed a certain physical commitment on the part of users to experience the personal benefits and values of game lands. That physical commitment is good, though we all must acknowledge the day looms when we won't be able to meet it. It protects by default certain game land qualities, admittedly intangible, linked to wildness and yielding experience. These cannot be manufactured. They can only be preserved where they yet remain. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President, if I may interrupt just briefly, this proposal, as a proposal, we've received comments from the Attorney General that if this is to pass, and I have no idea what the Commission's pleasure is, there will need to be an amendment to define Class 2 e-bikes because they are not defined in the current proposal. Class 2 e-bikes, of course, being those which have the same size restrictions, but also include a throttle. So I just want to bring that up in case anyone desires to make or try to make such an amendment. They would need to do so.
Further discussion?
I don't think I'm muted.
Mr. Secretary, call a vote.
Several of the commissioners have to be unmuted. They are unable to unmute themselves here. Brad, can you hear me? This is Commissioner Metrick.
Yes, I do.
Okay, is everybody good now?
Working on it, working on it.
Thank you.
I think I got
This is
everybody.
Commissioner Hoover. I am unmuted. I do want to offer some testimony to this. I understand Commissioner Mitrick's response. I also understand that as we have an aging population that can no longer travel those distances back. I was wondering if it'd be possible to make an amendment to this to just clear this for Class 1 e-bikes only. That would be reference to Brad Bechtel.
Commissioner, yes, that would be also an appropriate amendment if the motion is made, seconded, and passed. Yes.
So I'd like to, at this time, make a motion to amend PA Code 58, Code 131.2, 135.2, and 135.41 to make it for e-bikes only, e-bike 1, Class 1 only, and with the use of a hunting or fishing license.
This is Commissioner Layton. I'll second that motion.
Discussion any further? Call for a vote on that. Yeah.
Okay, this
Call
is
for a vote
Commissioner.
on that amendment.
Okay, this is Commissioner Mitrick. President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Nick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, no. Commissioner Foradora,
No.
Commissioner Fredericks,
No.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnebb-Geiger.
No.
So the vote is 4-4. It is not a majority, and I believe it does not pass.
Okay, I recommend we call the vote, Mr. President.
Call the vote.
Okay, this, Secretary Mitrick again. President Fox,
No.
Commissioner Nick,
Yes.
Michael Mitrick, no. Commissioner Foradora,
No.
Commissioner Fredericks,
No.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnebb-Geiger.
No.
The motion does not pass.
All right, the next item to come before the commission is on page 9 of your agenda. This is to amend 58 PA Code Section 135.41 to effectively manage the wildlife resources of this Commonwealth. The commission proposed at its April 7th, 2020 meeting to amend Section 135.41 relating to state game lands to eliminate the Sunday exemption from the fluorescent orange wearing requirement. The text is shown on page 10 of your agenda.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Commissioner Hoover.
This is Commissioner Mitrick, I'll second.
Discussion?
Can someone explain where this came from, what we're looking at doing with this proposal? This is Commissioner Layton, by the way. Jason, are you there?
I'm here now, Commissioner.
Can you give us a little insight on where this came from and what we're trying to accomplish?
I believe this is in response to the opening of the deer season on those Sundays. And in regards to people being on game lands on Sundays, requiring them to wear orange during the big game overlap.
Gotcha.
So I believe that there is an exemption in the code right now that people do not have to wear fluorescent orange on Sunday, and this is removing that exemption. Commissioner Hoover.
Any further discussion?
Secretary Mitrick calling for a vote. President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Nick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks, Commissioner Fredericks, If you can hear me, unmute your mic.
Sorry, yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton, Commissioner
Yes.
Schnepp-Geiger,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Brad, buddy, you're still muted.
Thank you. The next item on your agenda is on page 12 of the agenda. It concerns real estate, a donation. Contract number L3766, State Game Land number 159, Wayne County. Regency Marcellus Gas Gathering LLC, or Regency, is offering to donate 154.7 more or less acres of land in Mount Pleasant Township, Wayne County, and indenture into State Game Land number 159, as shown on Exhibit Red 1 on page 13 of your agenda. Regency offered to donate the land as replacement habitat to mitigate for lost wildlife resources and recreational values associated with construction and maintenance activities associated with the issuance of licenses for right-of-way for natural gas pipelines and appurtenances on State Game Lands number 12 in Sullivan and Bradford counties. Access is from Creamtown Drive.
Commissioner Layton, motion.
Commissioner Hoover, second.
Discussion?
Mr. President, it's Commissioner Fredericks. I'd like to ask a question of Pete Sussenbaugh, if I may. Pete, are you on here? Anybody from that bureau? Can anybody from that bureau tell me what the exchange rate was on this particular issue? I see we're getting 154.7 plus or minus, but what was impacted? Apparently it's a mitigation effort. Hello? That's okay. Mr. President, under the circumstances, I understand. Let's just move on.
Any other discussion?
This is Secretary Mitrick calling for the vote. President Fox.
Yes.
Commissioner Nick.
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Foradora.
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover.
Yes.
Commissioner Layton.
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp-Geiger.
Yes.
Mr. President, the motion carries.
The next item is on page 14 of your agenda. It concerns contract number L3767, State Game Land number 236 in Susquehanna County. The Conservation Fund is offering to donate 35 plus or minus acres of land in Ararat Township, Susquehanna County, and indenture into State Game Land number 236, as shown on Exhibit Red 2 on page 15 of your agenda. The Conservation Fund, acting as a conservation agent, is acquiring the property with funding provided by Williams Companies for voluntary mitigation as a result of impacts associated with the Constitution Pipeline project located in Susquehanna County. Access is from Ridge Road.
Is Commissioner Layton motion to accept?
Commissioner Knick, second.
Discussion, Mr. President.
Any discussion?
This is Commissioner Fredericks. As we proceed with this issue and the next several land-related issues, I would just like to point out to everybody the cooperation that we receive from the private sector and some of these nonprofits. In this case, the Conservation Fund. And as we go on, we'll see more and more. And the reason I'd like to point this out is because quite often we hear from the public that all of our game lands were purchased by hunters. And I just want to bring this to everybody's attention that that isn't entirely true. Although hunters played a major role in beginning the system and paying for the properties, we acquire a lot of these tracts through other means. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Secretary Metric, calling for the vote. President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Knick,
Yes.
Commissioner Metric, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp-Geiger.
Yes.
Mr. President, the motion carries.
The next item is on page 16 of your agenda, contract number L3768, State Game Land number 315 in Berks County. The last will and testament of Dwight K. Gaiman bequested real estate consisting of 13.52 more or less acres of land located in Pike Township, Berks County. The property is located approximately 1 mile south of one of 4 separate parcels that comprise State Game Land number 315, as shown on Exhibit Red 3 on page 17 of your agenda. Access is from Kime Road.
So
This
moved.
Commissioner Layton,
Kinnick.
motion to accept.
Second.
Commissioner
Any
Knick,
discussion?
second.
Discussion?
This is Commissioner Hoover. I understand that this is a last will and testament and a gift to the Game Commission. But my question is, do we have a reason to own this property as far as do we have a use for it? Being that it's a mile away from the nearest game lands and it's literally 13.52 acres and we are not allowed to sell property once we receive it, are we doing more harm by accepting this than not?
Mr. Hoover, this is Pete Sussenbach. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that was part of the evaluation process on this property. You know, there is always an opportunity at some point down the road, if this piece of property should become unhuntable, that we would be able to dispose of it through some sort of a trade or negotiation. According to the region and the land exam that they performed, there is hunting that does take place on this property at this point. They felt that there was enough archery hunting opportunities that we should acquire the property.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Further discussion?
Yeah, well, Pete, just along those lines, I mean, because it is not attached to the game lands, what about maintenance issues? Is it going to bring up, are there going to be some issues as far as maintenance on that property that we have to be concerned about?
You know, honestly, the only thing that we'd be providing is a small parking area and some boundary line work every, 5 years. So the intensity that we would need to perform down there is not all that great.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Call for the vote.
President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Nick,
Yes.
Commissioner Metric, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp-Geiger.
Yes.
Mr. President, the motion carries.
The next item appears on page 18 of your agenda. This is an acquisition, contract number L3769, State Game Land number 49 in Fulton County. The Conservation Fund is offering 43.36 more or less acres of land in Union Township, Fulton County, adjoining State Game Land number 49, as shown on Exhibit Red 4 on page 19 of your agenda. The option price is $400 per acre to be paid with funds from the Game Fund. Access is from T310.
Commissioner Knick, so moved.
Do we have any discussion on that?
Second, Mr. President.
Second?
Commissioner Metric, second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. President, this is Pete Sussenbach, if I just may briefly. Just a quick comment. This acquisition and the previous acquisition or 2 acquisitions ago. Sorry, we've had some technical difficulties here. Our partners over at the Conservation Fund, I cannot say enough about the great things that they have helped to provide to the Game Commission. I mean, here's another example. You know, we're looking at $400 an acre for this parcel. The previous parcel, there was absolutely no funds provided through that donation that they facilitated. So I just want to commend those folks over there for the great job and the excellent teamwork that we've had with them recently, and I really appreciate everything they've done.
Hey, Pete, this is Commissioner Fredericks. Pete.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fredericks, on this particular acquisition of $400 per acre, are you able to tell us what the market value was? What was the actual selling price?
I don't have that number offhand. We do have a valuation for that property, and I could tell you that it was significantly higher than the $400 an acre.
Okay, and as far as I know, we do have some interest legislatively. I think that there's some interest among the General Assembly to increase that $400 per acre maximum that we're statutorily committed to. Am I correct? That $400 per acre is an old number, and my understanding is that there was some interest legislatively to allow that to increase.
Yes, I believe there is at least some level of interest there. That number is actually from the recodification, which happened well over 20 years ago at this point.
Would you agree that it would benefit us to be able to pay more than $400 per acre if we need to?
Oh, I think there's a lot of opportunities. Yeah, and that would, I think, even enhance our opportunities even further.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Mr. Secretary, call the vote.
President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Knick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Fordora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp-Geiger.
Yes.
Mr. President, the motion carries.
And the next item before the commission is on page 20 of your agenda, contract number L3770, state game land number 211 in Dauphin County. Central Pennsylvania Conservancy Incorporated is offering 231 more or less acres of land in Middle Paxton Township, Dauphin County, adjoining state game land number 211, as shown on exhibit red 5 on page 21 of your agenda. The option price is $400 per acre to be paid with funds from the game fund. Access is from existing state game land number 211.
So moved, Commissioner Knick.
Second, Commissioner Hoover.
Discussion. Mr. Secretary, call for the vote.
President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Knick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Fordora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp-Geiger.
Yes.
Mr. President, the motion carries.
Next item before the commission appears on page 22 of your agenda. It concerns oil, gas, and minerals, a non-surface use cooperative agreement for oil and gas production. Tract 134A-20, state game land number 134 in Lycoming County. Alta Marcellus Development LLC, or ALTA, of Houston, Texas, requests that the commission offer its oil and gas ownership under a portion of state game land number 134 for development under a non-surface use cooperative agreement for exercise of production rights for oil and gas. The proposed Tract 134A20, containing approximately 1,966 acres of commission-owned surface, is located in Plunkett's Creek Township, Lycoming County, as shown on Exhibit OGM1, page 23 of your agenda. Alta has secured leases on private acreage to the north of the proposed game land tract and has the ability to develop the Commission's oil and gas reserves from the private holdings. OGM staff has negotiated with Alta to safeguard the prudent development of the Commission's oil and gas reserve and to simultaneously protect and minimize the impacts to the wildlife resources and recreational use of State Game Land Number 134. There will be no surface use of the game land under this agreement. In exchange for the non-surface use oil and gas production cooperative agreement, Alta will pay the Commission a bonus of $2,000 per net mineral acre for a 5-year paid-up primary term agreement and a royalty rate of 18% per 1,000 cubic feet MCF of all oil, gas, and liquid hydrocarbons produced and sold from the areas in which the Commission owns the oil and gas rights. The bonus payment of $3,932,500 will be due within 60 days of the execution of the agreement and deposited into the game fund. Alta's oil and gas development or under this agreement will be regulated by the Commonwealth's oil and gas regulations and the Commission's requirements for protection and conservation of state game lands with respect to oil, gas, and liquid hydrocarbon production.
Motion to accept, Commissioner Layton.
Second.
Commissioner Knick.
Discussion.
I do have one question. I noticed that we're moving the money into the game fund. Did we not used to post it into a reserve account? And is there a reason that we're doing so?
Yes, Commissioner Hoover, this is Pete Sussenbach. And after some discussions with the executive office, over the last few years, when we've had, generally the policy has been when we've had non-surface impacts, we have moved those dollars into the game fund. In those places that we knew that we were going to be taking significant surface impacts, we would then try to offset and mitigate for those impacts by moving those funds into a separate account that was specific to be dealing with enhancement and replacement properties for those impacts.
Thank you.
Pete, this is Commissioner Fredericks.
Yes, sir.
Do we separate the funds further in the way that they come in the way of royalties and then lease money? I guess you call them bonus payments. Do bonus payments go to a different place than royalty payments?
Although they're accounted for just a little differently, they all come under the umbrella of the game fund. So yeah, there's not a further separation beyond that.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know why they're accounted for a little differently? Or is one used for something that the other isn't?
Negative. I mean, they generally, again, go into the game fund, but it's just an accounting thing. You're going to get a lump sum basically of that $3.9 million. So that's accounted for one way. And then as royalties come online over the next several years, they would just be accounted for. It makes it a little easier to track from our end. And Mike DiMatteo and his shop are doing a great job with doing that. I just think it's an easier way to track it as far as budgeting and other items are concerned.
All right, Pete, thank you. One last question. Do we collect much statewide in the way of shut-in fees?
I don't know what the number is off the top of my head right now, but we have had some of that over the last few years. There's not a lot of that. Most of the game lands ground, because we have non-surface impacts. A lot of times the operators already have significant planning and development occurring off state game lands. It's just a matter of them running their laterals underneath state game lands once they come under lease with us. So there is some amount that we've done that with, but just not a tremendous amount at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you and your folks, including Mike DiMatteo, for the great work that they do. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Having come from the energy industry, I scratch my head every week. I don't know how you guys do what you do with what you have. You and your folks do amazing work. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the comments, and I'll be sure to pass that along.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll call for that vote.
President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Knick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp Geiger.
yes,
Mr. President, the motion carries.
At
Mr.
this
President
time,
and Commissioners, that completes the red portion of the agenda.
okay. At this time, I'd like to bring the CWD plan. We're going to need a motion to consider that for approval.
This is Commissioner Foradora, so moved.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Layton,
Knick,
second.
second.
Discussion.
Commissioner,
Any discussion? Mr. Secretary, call for the vote.
President Fox,
Yes.
Commissioner Knick,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitrick, yes. Commissioner Foradora,
Yes.
Commissioner Fredericks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoover,
Yes.
Commissioner Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Schnepp Geiger.
yes,
Mr. President, the motion carries.
Any other new business? Okay, I've heard from many of our hunters concerned about the complexity and inconvenience of how they purchase their antlerless license. The current process is antiquated. You have to pay by check. Many young people don't even have a check. Current system is confusing, cumbersome, and provides poor customer service. This process is mandated by law and would have to be changed by the legislature. However, I'd like for staff to research a process within our licensing system that would bring us up to 2020 standards if the legislature would give us authority to manage this process. Next commission meeting, September 25, 26, 2020, be here in Harrisburg. We'll have an executive. Any other new business? Okay. The executive session will follow if necessary.
Just make a quick comment about the next commission meeting. I understand all the issues that we have, COVID-19, and I know that there are guidelines that we have to follow, but I would hope that we could find a way to make the next meeting happen in person and not virtually. These virtual meetings are beyond cumbersome. They're non-functional. They're ineffective. They're not personal. We're losing contact with our NGOs, with our staff. And I think if we can keep within the guidelines of the governor's policy, and we can keep everybody safe, I would really like to see this happen and we get to Harrisburg so that we can be together as a group once again.
Any further comments? Motion to adjourn?
So moved, Commissioner Layton.
Second, Commissioner Fredericks.
We're adjourned.
We are adjourned.
That concludes our meeting for today. Again, this session has been recorded and we expect it to be uploaded to the Game Commission's YouTube channel early next week. On behalf of the board, the executive office, and the rest of the staff, we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your weekend to join us, and we hope you're able to get outside and enjoy some of Pennsylvania's great outdoors.
Welcome to the teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, press pound. Host has not yet arrived. Please stand by.